Madam President, thank you very much. And to Sheriff Reed, just one further question. I know that when you came in after a time where there had been a lot of internal problems and for lack of a better word, corruption and such things that went on in the sheriff's office prior to your taking over. And my question is as to whether you feel that that you have now cleaned out all these problems and corrected them, and that all of these leftover problems have been eliminated, or is there still some work needing to be done to fix problems that you inherited from that prior administration?
There's still a lot of work to be done, and here's one issue, and I think it's countywide. The issue of absenteeism and sick leave abuse is, I believe, in my opinion, is huge. And I don't want to paint that with a real broad brush, because we get 85 to 90% of our employees come to work every day and work very hard. But those that choose not to, where we see a pattern of absenteeism and sick leave, it costs big dollars for our organization and for the county, for countywide. When I first came into office here, and that's part of what the old regime would allow. They allowed that to happen. When I got into office a year and a half ago, I met with all the unions and all 13 at the time we had 11 bargaining units, all the union representatives and employee representatives, and said, listen, we have a lot of priorities here, but one of our priorities is absenteeism and a patterned use of sick leave abuse. And I said, eventually we're going to get to that. So about 3 months ago, I outlined to all of our employees, and I did it in the newsletter, saying what we were going to do. And again said, you know what, this is a broad brush. It may be a broad brush, but I don't mean it to be that way, because I know we have a lot of 90% of our employees are great employees, come to work every day. But the 10% are costing us a lot of money and a lot of resources that we could spend differently. So I had another meeting with them and put in our newsletter that this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at all of those throughout the organization that we believe have a patterned use of sick leave abuse and absenteeism. We're not going to look at those that have legitimate issues. We know, and we know those that don't. And I said, here's what we're going to do. We are going to hire. Now, you may think this is dramatic, and our employees did also. We are going to hire private investigators, and we are going to earmark those that we believe are sick leave abusers. And when we find them at Cedar Point, instead of working, they're going to be fired. And within a week, after I met with all of the employees and all the unions and said, this is what we're doing. Why am I tipping my hat? Why are we doing what we're doing? Is because I don't want anyone to knock on my door and say you didn't know. So we work with our HR department. We work with the HR department across the street, which was great. Joe Nanny's prior gig as the HR director, they did a wonderful job for us. In any case, within a week, we had somebody on videotape, and we waited another week and had him again that had called in sick, and we had him at places that he shouldn't have been. And we brought that individual in and we fired him. We actually allowed him to resign. And this was an 11-year employee. The mission and the message that we're sending is that we're not going to tolerate it. And what happens, which is a little frustrating to me, is that it's a huge impact for a couple weeks, and then what happens is they start to wean off of it. But we're going to keep it up. We're using resources now, and it can be expensive, but we're going to save in the long term. So that is an issue that we're still trying to get our hands around, and we're going to continue to do that. we have so many success stories, but there's others challenges out there that we need to look at, and but that's just one of them. To answer your question directly, no, we're not done cleaning up, and we're going to continue to do it.
Mr. Brady?
Thank you, Madam Council President. We're finishing up here, and we thank you for your time, Sheriff Reed. What I feel, compelled to say is really not directed at you, but really directed at my colleagues, but also at the process. You certainly came in a very unique time in the county's history. And the way that you came in was not only amidst all the controversy and scandal that involved not just the sheriff's office. In fact, the sheriff's office in a completely separate kind of a way than corruption throughout county government and government in general. But you came in through the usual process, and the usual process was always through the central committee of the political party that held the position. You may have been the last person to come in that way in the history of Cuyahoga County, but that's what the rules are. That's right. The way it works.
Exactly. It's the law.
So we kind of lose track of that sometimes because all this has gone by. I only mean to say that by you have never run for office for Cuyahoga County Sheriff. That's probably been quite a relief, I'm imagining. I know the upside clearly is that you don't have to spend your time crisscrossing the county as a political figure, as well as trying to be on top of the responsibilities that you have that are so much more important, raising funds, et cetera, and all those things that have caused a problem. It's also, though, important, I think, for the council members, and which they know, but to remember, and for everybody to remember, that this system of electing county sheriffs and them being high-profile political figures has been common throughout counties, throughout the United States, throughout decades and decades. In a lot of rural areas, they were called the high sheriff, and they could be there for a generation. They may be the most influential person in the entire county, traditionally, in a lot of parts of the country. Now, in a big metropolitan area, it's a little different, that's for sure. But now we've got a new system. We're moving into a new system and trying to find how this works. And while you are appointed by the county executive and confirmed by the county council then has no ability to remove you. And this is not personal. I'm talking about the office of sheriff,
sure.
And whoever that may be 20 years from now, et cetera. And but nevertheless, the legislative body is a co-equal branch under this charter. And so an ability for us to do our due diligence and for your office to respond to this legislature is going to be an important part of the job as well, and something very different than county sheriffs, and certainly in this place and in most places have ever been used to. I mean, they've dealt with commissioners, of course, in some ways, but they really stood on their own in so many ways. The other upside, though, of the sheriff standing on their own is they had the independence to do what they thought was right. And, hopefully in many cases they did that. Maybe in some cases, there might have been abuse of power because of that independence, but that's what comes along with our form of government in some cases. And we will be going through a charter review sometime in the next few years. And one of the offices that comes up quite frequently when you discuss charter review with people is the Office of County Sheriff, because in many places that have county executives and have county councils, in many of these communities, they still elect county sheriffs. And there are some people who believe that county sheriffs should still be elected. I'm not proposing a position on these matters. I'm raising them as something that we're going to be looking at very soon, and there's a lot to look at. The downside of the elections is obvious in many, because of what we've been through recently and what I've also already mentioned. But the independence of the sheriff, the independence of the sheriff's office, is something I'm concerned about being lost in this new charter. And when you spoke of, and rightly so, your background and the chain of command, I clearly understand what you mean, and there has to be a chain of command. But it concerns me that the sheriff's office is now not as independent as it was in the past, even if we've gotten away from the politics. I'm wondering, if we can find a way to thread the needle. If there's a way that we can have a sheriff's appointed without being at will in terms of their position with the county executive, if they might, and it's just a suggestion and not a proposal at this point by any means, if they might be people who they might be appointed for a particular term of office like an FBI director is, and then have autonomy in that office for a certain amount of time before they're either they're given us only a certain amount of time to serve, or they could be reappointed after a certain amount of time. But I do think that these are issues that are not going to go away. Structural issues having nothing to do with a lot of the other conversations we've had today. But I felt a need to express my opinion about those as we stand at this sort of crossroads of an old system and a new system. But we're not quite, I think, finished with how the sheriff's office is going to be defined, potentially by the new county charter. And so I just wanted to, highlight what I think is an important aspect of this office, its independence, its need, in my opinion, to be independent of the county executive, more so than the charter currently calls for. And I don't really, I'm not saying don't respond, but it was not a question, and I do not, want to put you in a position of needing to respond. It seems to me that it would be a very difficult position for you to be in. So this is not a question. It's a comment to my colleagues and to everyone about the office of sheriff.
Mm-hmm. If I may, I'll be very brief. It's a really good question. As you know, during the campaign, I went out into the community, and in reference to issues involving the change of government, I was pretty specific in talking to the community that said that I had reservations on the issues of the autonomy of the sheriff's office. 88 counties throughout the state of Ohio, no county has an unelected sheriff. There's only few in the United States, except for Vermont and Texas, that have a little different form of government on how sheriffs are actually elected or appointed. But everywhere else in the United States, a sheriff is autonomous. And I shared that I was soft in the issue of the whole issue of changing government. But I did have an opinion on the autonomy of the sheriff's office. And when and there's no template in the state of Ohio. There just isn't. And my colleagues in the Buckeye State Sheriff's Association say, how are you going to handle that? And are you relieved? My answer is I am relieved. And I guess only the future is going to say how much I'm relieved. There's got to be, I guess I look at it in a selfish way, in a sense. I've been around for a long time, and I've been involved in law enforcement for 36 years. And if, in fact, and served in this form of government, 10 years as a city manager with 7 bosses, I never got to the point where I had to start counting, which I think was a good idea. It was a good idea. I never had a line in the sand. So I had a great relationship, and I get it. I get the council form of government. And in this case, the executive. And when the executive said that he was going to appoint me, I said, first of all, thank you. And he says, it's going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. And I said, well, not really. I'm more used to this form of government in 35 years with a county executive and council form of government than I was as an independent candidate. Now, with all of that said, here's, I think, just a little bit of difference. If there was any time in government where I felt, and I shared this with the county executive. He asked me about a possibility of a contract, and I said, you know what? I have a lot of confidence in my ability. When I became city manager, the council asked me that too, and I was a little risky at that time. I was 48 years old. My kids were just starting college, and you had those issues. So it was a little risky, but I have confidence in my ability. And I also have confidence in my judgment. If I would ever feel in this government that even remotely that I was asked to do something that I was uncomfortable with, I wouldn't do it. And but that goes along with being, I think, seasoned, being around a long time, and the ability to walk away. I won't worry about the sheriff's office now. I would worry maybe in the future when you get somebody, and I'm not going to be here that long. That you get somebody in the office that maybe doesn't have the wherewithal to do that, and but you would hope that you get, this is new in government in its infancy stages, and you just hope that we've really learned from our mistakes, and you get a county executive and you get a council that knows these issues and says, hey, we're never going to put the sheriff or other individuals into that position. So I hear you on the autonomy issue, and it's going to see in the future what that brings. But right now, I'm comfortable with it.
Madam Chairman, personally, I just want a final comment because you're right. I'm not making my comments, aimed at you or the county executive. It's aimed at the office and the office of county executive and where we could find ourselves, down the road long after we're all gone.
Absolutely.
Mr. Jones?
Sheriff, we have a lot of new technology now. I'd like to know how your communication with the prosecutor's office is going as far as the technology. It's called the criminal matter
Crime
exchange.
There's some good things about the crime is the acronym for the prosecutor's office. IT, their information technology that we share with the courts, with the sheriff's office. There's some good things. There's some real good things with the system, and there's areas that are really lacking in the technology. I would really like to see in the future where we're. And I'm sure that this council and this county executive are going to address these issues, but we're really all over the place in reference to information technology in the entire county. I see private vendors out there that are doing things much cheaper and more efficiently. So I think that there's these private vendors out there that need to be at least brought into the loop to talk to them, to say, what are you doing? Because I can name a few of them right off the top of my head that do an outstanding job at considerably less money. So we have a great relationship with the prosecutor's office. I don't like right now where information technology is countywide. But I think this council and the county executive is going to look at that. We shouldn't. There's certain things that we should be doing in-house to save a lot of money, and there's other things that maybe that's where we should be spending outside into the private sector. But I think we should look at how we get the best bang for our buck. And right now, I just don't think that we're doing that.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Madam President. I just had two quick questions just for clarity. The first was the highway interdiction program. are these officers called out when they suspect that if someone's been pulled over and then they may suspect that something's going on in the vehicle, are these officers called out specifically for that, or are they out on the highways pulling people over looking for any type of contraband? And then the second is I just wanted a clearer definition on the difference between a protective service officer and a deputy.
Yeah, good question. Highway interdiction. Highway interdiction is a training. We have I don't want to share how many narcotics detectives. I'll tell you in private, but how many narcotics detectives that we actually have. But all of our narcotics detectives are trained in what's called highway interdiction and also package interdiction. Highway interdiction is when they get the time. If they're not working a case throughout the Cuyahoga County, and we usually work some very, very large cases with the Caribbean Task Force and other task forces throughout Cuyahoga County that we're members of. If they get some downtime, which is not often, we take a narcotics officer along with a K-9 officer, and we go out and we sit on the freeways. And they are trained to see, identify couriers of narcotics, and they stop them. Here's a great success story. About 6 weeks ago, Middleburg Heights had a carjacking. This could have been very dangerous. Our people could have been hurt. But they had a carjacking in Middleburg Heights. They put over the radio that they had this carjacking, but we weren't monitoring. Our highway interdiction unit was out there on 480, and we didn't monitor that radio broadcast of this hijacking. In any case, our highway interdiction guys, these were two guys that were involved in narcotics that actually hijacked this car. They actually spot this car, not knowing that it was involved in this hijacking. They spot these two individuals. They stop and they pull them over because they believed that they were involved in some kind of narcotics issues, which they were. But it turned out that they had just hijacked this car out of Middleburg Heights. Middleburg Heights Police Chief John Maddox contacted me, and he goes, you know what? These are success stories that we never used to have before. So these guys are trained, and they're the only ones that are trained in the Cuyahoga County to spot package couriers coming into the community. We also go out to independent trucking companies throughout Cuyahoga County, including UPS and FedEx, and we do package interdiction. Drugs coming into the community, money going out, and so forth. They're highly trained in that. I don't want to get into all the specifics of it, but we're very, very successful with it. So that's on highway interdiction. So to answer your question, though, Councilman, when they get the time to do it, if they're working cases throughout Cuyahoga County and they don't have time, then they don't have time. But if they have any lag time, they go out there and they work highway interdiction. Just to stay sharp on it also. Protective services. Let me tell you the really brief history of protective services. They were under central services up until when I became sheriff. Protective services, again, what's been traditionally called brown shirts, and we're getting away from that. We're changing the uniform, as I said, in patches. They are responsible for the protection of the 31 buildings that belong to Cuyahoga County. Some buildings are more protected than others. For example, the Marion building. They have magnetometers there because that's where our probation department mainly is at. We also have it on the 7th floor in the Justice Center. But we have magnetometers there. They man the magnetometers. The Virgil Brown building, they man the magnetometers there. Their certification through the state of Ohio, deputies have to have 600 and some hours of the full police academy, considered Ohio peace officers. Protective Services has 120 hours of training, and they are considered a lesser certificate. Not that their job is any lesser, but their certificate is lesser. So they are more in the Protective Services or security category. They're not paid as much as deputy sheriffs are. And we have 155 of them at the 31 different buildings. But what we're doing, as I said, is we're looking at those posts. We've done an assessment on all 31 buildings. And I get beat up on this a little bit, but that's okay. It comes a little bit with the territory. I get the department heads that call up and say, hey, you're pulling our security out of here. And some that are saying, God, I'm pleased that you're adding. But that's what we do. The reason they approached the sheriff's office, Central Services did, approach the sheriff's office, Jim McCafferty, Jay Ross, and others, to say protective services should be under the sheriff's office because it is closer to law enforcement than Central Services is. And they're right. We then introduced, not only, they had guns. There's a continuum of force that is used in law enforcement. You know, you talk to people, it gets out of hand, and they get unruly. You use pepper spray, and then if it really becomes a life and death situation, you use a handgun. They didn't have that. They had guns and mouths. So we said, hey, you know what? It's unacceptable. Immediately, we got them trained in pepper spray, all 155 of them. They are now trained in pepper spray. We are working on the type of firearms they have and the type of holsters that they're carrying so that they have more retention on those holsters. But it's a little bit, it's certainly different, their mission statements. The Cleveland bailiffs, actually, there's common pleas court bailiffs that are all in plain clothes. They are assigned to common pleas judges, and I believe that there's one bailiff per judge. And then there's Cleveland Municipal Court bailiffs that are uniform division. Most of them do not carry firearms. There are some that do carry firearms, and they're trained actually in our facility.
Should you man, I believe you have the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really don't have to really expound on this, but my first round of questions, I was talking about attrition, and I was just wondering, we talked about the staffing of the people and the training. Is there a time period, like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when there's a bubble of a majority or a big number of people are going to be leaving? And then in your particular case, I was just wondering, is there a minimum amount of time that you're committing to staying as the sheriff?
Well, I think I should have my wife here for for that issue. You know, I'm 59 years old. To answer your question, I'm 59 years old, and I have said to others that I don't know if I will spend 3 or 4 more years in this profession. You know, this is I've been in a high stress position for most of my life. I certainly take care of myself. I run a lot. I work out. But with all of that said, stress is a killer. So I don't think that I'd stay in this position more than 2 or 3 years. But it certainly depends on where we're at and what we're doing. As far as issues with succession is concerned, we have a lot of young officers. As you know, we really did a lot of controversial things. We demoted, and I shouldn't say demoted. We reassigned the lieutenants that were promoted for some wrong reasons, put them down to sergeants, and then we had a countywide test for lieutenant positions, and we just did that about less than a year ago. So we have 3 new young lieutenants that are in positions of a lot of responsibility. So we're concerned about succession issues, but I think that we have a young group of people that are coming up that are really going to be special for the sheriff's office. Sure.
All right, Mr. Shrine?
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question and request, and actually following on, commend my colleague, Councilman Brady, on his comments, because none of us are here for our responsibility. It's for the future, and I commend you on saying 2 to 3 years, so it puts you in a perfect position to say, yes, this should be an independent, no, it's working fine. Whatever the outcome is, you've got no chips on the table other than to make the best call. And so we would expect, as we, as a council, start to review what that new charter should look like, which is one of our responsibilities, that we will tap you for that honest, straightforward opinion, because that's what we're all here for, is the best interest. You are, I look at it, as of January 1st, you're the new CEO of the Sheriff's Responsibilities. Similar to any other CEO, one of the first things that most CEOs look at, and they say, okay, what's the most efficient way to operate this organization? You have 18 units. Have you considered consolidation, merger, acquisition of similar terms that we would use in business? Those thoughts, and usually unfortunately it's technology that ends up driving at lower headcount and things of that nature. What have you done in regards to, again, zero-based budget was your best case example, so you would start with 0 and build up to some number, hopefully not above 18.
Yes, it's a first. What we need to do is look at those that are mandated through the Ohio Revised Code on some of these units. So those units certainly, and that's where we start with the core.
And is that?
We have about 6 that are mandated through the Ohio Revised Code. The sex offenders units, court towers, such as those. So we have to look at those. Other issues that we've looked at is each. These collective bargaining agreements too that have all of these organizations separate. For example, we have deputies, then we have deputy sergeants, we have deputy lieutenants. I think a number of those have to be consolidated into like a supervisor's collective bargaining unit. Deputies and supervisors. COs, corrections officers, 540 of them. They have their own collective bargaining. Corporals have their own. Sergeants have their own. This takes a ton of time. So we are looking at issues, and you have to be sensitive to those issues. You got to look at their sides of them. So we're looking at those issues, and what are some of the ways that we can consolidate that? We're looking at the issues. IT is so important throughout the organization. And what we haven't done is we haven't done enough with IT. We have 7 that are in the organization, and then when we saw this form of government coming in, we said, you know what? We have 300 workstations throughout the organization. A lot of hardware, software issues. We haven't done as much as I would like to do with IT because we saw the change coming and what is going to happen IT-wise county-wide. We should be looking at, I think that's probably one of the most important things that need to be done county-wide is information technology and how we can save hundreds, if not millions of dollars in the revamping of IT issues. The other issue is, and I think where we can save the most, is in jail operations. We are looking at facilities. For example, a facility manager issue. Right now we have those that are in charge of the kitchen, the laundry, the different issues throughout the jail that comes with taking care of medical, that comes with taking care of 2,000 plus inmates a day. We are looking at consolidating that. We've already done it from the top down. We've taken a number of positions where we were brass heavy. We realized it right from the beginning, and we've cut down those positions from 6 to 4, and we're going to do probably even more in the future. So we're looking at the entire operation, and we started. My challenge was in the first year is to fix a lot that was wrong. Now we're looking at good business and good business policy on what we can do to, 1, save money, and 2, be more reactive to 1, our population, our inmate population, and also what we can do to build morale within the organization. I think it's coming, and I think it's there, but we have a little ways to go.
Well, based on a 0 base, so we start with 6 and some number, sounds like we're going to be considerably lower than 18 when it's all said and done.
Yes. I'd like to see somewhere in the area of 10 or 11.
Whoever's on the budget, I think that's a very great place to, from that standpoint. The request is that you indicated on April 1st, this new consideration for the consolidation of prisoners was going to kick off. I thought I heard that in your comment.
No, actually, what we had said last year that January 1st was going to be did you say April 1st, Councilman?
I thought you indicated.
I did say. I'm sorry.
I thought you
said
indicated April
January
1st in your opening comments.
April 1st is the soft date that we have said, and I think that depending on what way we go, it may be doable or it may not. I think that the furthest date should be June 1st, but April 1st I think is doable if we get going on it right away.
The request, Madam President, would then to have this come before this in one of our work sessions, because we're talking about, I would assume, a considerable amount of money that's going to be part of this project. And
absolutely.
At least to be informative. And then, Madam President, if you think it's appropriate to send it to safety or to the judicial affairs, whatever committee you think it's appropriate. But I think it's significant enough that we should know, and coupled with the fact that if it's when it is going to be a success, it also is one of those elements that comes up all the time of how can we show regional success. This is an element that truly would sound like it's where we can go out and wave the flag and say, here's another element where regional success could take place.
A real success story it can be.
Hey, we've been at this just about 3 hours, and I really appreciate your time and your consideration. I'd just like to reiterate some of the other council persons have brought up. I do charge you and the administration also that under, I believe it's 603 of the charter, that the council has the exclusive jurisdiction of creating departments. And we have some concerns that departments and things are being created without our knowledge. So we'd like to make sure that these areas are tightened up. And for instance, the Department of Justice Affairs has been abolished. We're not sure where all of those things are gone. If new departments are created, that's our exclusive jurisdiction. And we intend to carry out that charge in the charter. In addition to which, my second point, and I think it's been made by a number of the other council persons, is that we are an independent branch of government, that we have certain responsibilities, that we have to establish a clear liaison, that we have to have this information before these programs come up for a vote. So as Mr. Schron said, we have work sessions, we have our Public Safety Committee and our Justice Affairs Committee, that we've got to establish a clear liaison where this information is come into the pipeline before it's going to come up for a vote. And then, of course, with Mr. Miller, in terms of the budget, that these possible budgetary matters are going to have to be presented to the Budget Committee, so these can be vetted through the Justice Committee, before they come up. But other than that, I thank you for your consideration. You've been extremely knowledgeable. I really commend it. He's a resident of District 9, so we can commend him.
Very
for
important. Although I graduated from Mayfield High School, so I'm sure I could touch all your wards somehow.
Okay.
Nice of that.
All right. At this point, do we have a motion regarding a recommendation for Sheriff Reed?
I would be happy to move that this council appoint Sheriff Reed, confirm Sheriff Reed's appointment to continue to be, and to be our next sheriff under the new charter.
I would second it.
Moved by Mr. Brady and seconded by Mr. Schron. Now, we're on virgin territory here. This has to be voted on at our meeting, our next meeting, which will be February 8th. So we just accept the motion for recommendation then, and then we will call for the official vote at the meeting. Madam Clerk, make sure that's the agenda item for the meeting for February 8th for an official vote, which we will take here in public. All right. Is there any other discussion or other matter? We have our next candidate at 1 o'clock. I was wondering, should we set that back for 1:15 or 1:30? Can we notify our next candidate and possibly make it for 1:30? We can start and give us an opportunity to take a break. All right. All right. Well, I always want to say court stands adjourned. The council stands adjourned until. Oh, we have to vote on the motion? Okay. All right. Let's, Madam Clerk, we're going to call for a vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries, and this will be voted on an official meeting on February the 8th, and congratulations, Mr. Sheriff.
Madam Chairman, Council, thanks very much. I really, really look forward to working with you.
And
Thanks
we
very
appreciate
much.
your consideration. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.